Hi, I'm Jarvis Smith and welcome to episode 2 of our COP27 series in partnership with Fujitsu. This episode is digital ecosystems and data. How are we collaborating and using these to tackle the issues of the day? We're very much focused on the energy crisis and the housing sector. We've got great guests. We've got Ian Bradbury, who's Chief Technology Officer for Financial Services at Fujitsu. We've got Kevin Murphy, who's Customer Journey Manager, Home Buying and Ownership at the NatWest Group. We've got David Sykes, who's Data Scientist at Octopus Energy, and Robin Peters, Co-Founder and CEO of Snugg Energy. It's going to be a fantastic episode. I hope you enjoy it. So I'd like to introduce you to episode 2. We've got Ian Bradbury from Fujitsu, David Sykes from Octopus Energy, Robin Peters from Snugg, and Kevin Murphy from NatWest. Now, thank you for joining us. Ian, I'm going to dive straight into this question. How important are data and digital ecosystems, number one, and how can they be used in parallel?
Well, I think digital ecosystems and data are really, really important, partly because of the complexities of the problems that we face. So if you take the subject that we're talking about today, which is sustainable homes and buildings, there are so many different aspects of that come into play. Whether that be the energy providers, the data that you can get from things like smart meters, understanding grants that can support homeowners to improve the insulation within their homes, and a whole host of other things as well. And it's an extremely changeable environment. So if you, for example, if you had looked at this a year ago, you would have had a very different set of circumstances with regards to the cost of energy, and you might have to do a different thing. So you've got lots of different organizations that potentially can participate in a digital ecosystem to provide information and to use that information in different ways. You've also got the whole aspect of data now being available in ways that it was never done before. And using those things combined, you can help to navigate your way through to the best result as quickly as possible for the least effort. So that would be my summary of why data and digital ecosystems is so important. It's just such a big problem, and it's very complex.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really great answer. Thank you, because it just kind of sets the scene for our subject matter. So, Kevin, moving on to you. Obviously, NatWest, you got a huge, huge customer base. Can you give us any good examples of a digital ecosystem within the organization, and what are you doing with data that's opening new operational demands or better business relationships, please?
Absolutely, thank you. And I think, as Ian says, and actually our CEO Alison Rose describes the climate challenge as being the most complex challenge facing society today, and it gets ever more complex as we continue to deep dive into it. And I think the only way to solve that is using data and using the digital ecosystems that exist and that we can create, that will support that. I guess in NatWest, we have just over 1 million customers who have a mortgage with NatWest. And we have 50% of those customers who know their energy performance certificate, so how their home operates from an energy perspective. So that's another 50% of our customers who don't know that, and that's fairly typical across the UK. The only way you'll get an energy performance certificate is either by proactively asking for one or having to create an energy performance certificate to buy or sell a home. And what we've done with a couple of partners over the last year or so is to introduce a digital energy performance certificate. And if you think about a digital energy performance certificate, it's similarly to a desktop valuation for your home, if you like. So it's something where at the moment you have to get a physical individual to come out and perform an assessment. We have used a modelling technique along with our partners to actually create a digital EPC which is a lot less expensive, a lot more readily available, and very much we've already, as I say, modelled it to say that it's within tolerance, so it gives you that indication of what you need to do next. And why that's important is that it becomes very personalised, so people can take action from it. And we can also work with our partners. As you may know, we've created the Sustainable Homes and Building Coalition with other partners, whereby we are now able to support our customers right across the gamut of what they need to achieve. So, for example, if they want to think about how do they put Ian mentioned insulation in, or how they go about purchasing a heat pump, those are the kind of things that the digital data allows the customer to take informed decisions and actions, and then engage with the supply chain, which is being built as we speak. I don't think it's there yet, but it allows our customers to make informed decisions and actually change the footprint of their home from a carbon footprint, but also from a cost perspective.
Brilliant. I mean, Robin and David, and Ian actually as well. I mean, is there anything that you would add to that from your perspective? Because clearly energy is a big hot topic right now.
The only thing I'd add is, the centre of this is making it friendly to customers. It's a really complex sector. The modelling that Kevin referred to is kind of pretty complex at its core, and people will only respond to that if it's presented in a way that engages them and brings them along the journey.
Yeah, great. And David, anything to add onto that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the complement of sort of usability, which Robin was talking about there, is providing a value signal. So in a lot of the discussions I've had within the energy sector, we talk about data as something that can revolutionize the energy sector. But really, the way we see it is that it can only do that if it can coalesce around a value signal. So that could be something as simple as like giving a customer some value signal that if they get a more energy efficient home, how can they translate that into like pounds in their pocket? Or it might be something really complex like the National Grid providing really complex value signals to suppliers and aggregators so that they can optimize around that reflects the sort of state of the grid at each point in time. But until you get those, you don't really the push of innovation in the data space is sort of suppressed. And I think this crisis is actually starting to do that in many ways.
Yeah, it's getting people to refocus, and yeah. I mean, you must be. It's great actually that you've elaborated on that. I mean, you must be seeing, for want of a better word, a kind of relationship and how we might build empathy within the parameters of using data. And clearly you've touched on it. There are some touch points there. But what are you doing as a service provider, and what are you seeing in terms of results by using that data?
So I mean, I think I'm sort of thinking like two timescales right now in terms of the energy crisis. There's sort of the energy crisis now, which is really an affordability and a scarcity crisis driven by markets, like global energy markets. And affordability in the short term can be solved by helping customers use less and giving them financial support. In many ways, neither of which are particularly like data friendly challenges. Helping that there are places where we can use data in that space, but generally, like, the government has taken an approach of providing blanket customer support, financial support, to make sure everyone is supported. But I think in this sort of use less but maintain comfort, there's some really interesting things that we can do. One of the things we ran last year and we'll be running again this year is something called a winter workout, where we basically give customers access to their granular smart meter gas data, and then we help them kind of benchmark against what we expect them to use, and then see their savings, and then we give them points for savings, so we sort of gamify it. And we saw some amazing savings results, sort of between like 2 and 10% across different customer groups in terms of gas savings and millions of pounds of bills saved. So that's that's a sort of affordability thing. And then on the scarcity side, there's an amazing thing National Grid are doing. We've partnered with them on this, but we'll be running with a few suppliers, which is basically when the grid is really tight this winter, rather than paying big nuclear power stations to turn down, or big gas turn up, or build big gas peakers to turn up. They're going to pay customers to turn down, which is a very incredible sort of circular economy thing, where ultimately the customer foots the bill of the energy system, and if they can get paid to turn down, and that's a really cool thing, which is sort of addressing scarcity.
There's going to be lots more people running up and down the stairs and putting jumpers on there to get some cash. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's brilliant. Though. I mean, yeah. Thank you for that. I could go on, but I won't. Would any of you like to build on that, or is there anything that your minds are ticking over, thinking, "Oh, I must add this in"?
The only point I'd add on the smart meters is, it's a bit of a dirty secret in the industry that until recently, or not smart meters, that the in-house thermostats, that when people have the capability of tweaking temperature in their homes, generally, until recently, they haven't been reducing temperature, they've been increasing it because it makes you snug, so you sort of just add a couple of degrees because you can do it from your smartphone. Now the circumstance has changed dramatically now, and I think now's the time for smart thermostats to really come in their own, because people really do need to reduce usage and be smarter in terms of how they're using that energy.
Yeah, we've certainly turned down our boiler to the lowest point it can be, and the water's still plenty hot enough.
Yeah, and I think it's so important though, in that it's that nudge, it's that behavioural change, and it's making it easy. We all use our phones every day, every hour, and having the smart thermostat on your phone to be able to just touch a button, even not to get off the couch to go and touch the button on the boiler. We are lazy as a human race, so it's about making it easy. And being able to nudge and incentivize, as David mentioned, in terms of I don't think we can talk about the data in terms of emissions or even kilowatt hours, because customers don't understand that. And Robin and Ian mentioned it earlier. It's about making it easy and simple to understand and take that action in terms of behaviours. And small changes can make a difference. And I think there's also a reliance on organisations such as ourselves and the guys around the table, is that we need to be mindful of the fact that there's a huge cost in terms of the customer outlay if they want to make some changes around heat pumps, around insulation as well. And that's why data is so important, to really personalise it and ensure people understand the cost and the benefits associated with doing that.
Very good. And I know we're quite heavily focused, if you like, perhaps on the domestic side of things. But Ian, just bearing in mind your role at Fujitsu, and of course the ecosystem of businesses that you're networked with, what, from your perspective, is happening in the business world? Just around this very subject matter, around the energy savings and using data cleverly. Are you seeing any interesting things?
Clearly, you've got much larger buildings. You've got property management and other activities within big enterprises. You've got building management systems and so on. So I think at the commercial end, actually, this problem they've had the power to do something about this problem for quite some time, and I think they're beginning to do things now as the energy costs are going through the roof. I think small and medium businesses are probably more challenged in that aspect, and certainly that we're going to need to pull down some of the technology solutions that supported the bigger enterprises into some of the smaller organizations. Retail and hospitality is a real problem area in that context. So I think in some ways that part of the problem is easier to solve than the residential end of the marketplace. And I think that the way in which governance sits around big enterprises as well, and even coming down towards SMEs in the supply chain, that they are mandated to do something about some of these challenges by their own governance and some of the regulation that sits within there, in ways that the general public or even to some extent the landlords for rented properties aren't mandated. But there is a discrepancy there. I know we're talking about businesses, and maybe a landlord buy-to-lets is actually, you could consider them to be a business. There is regulation that applies to them, which is putting a strain on them to take the initiatives to solve some of these problems, and that's actually creating another problem as well, because you're seeing people getting out of buy-to-let now because it's not economically viable for them to carry on. So they're transferring that housing stock back into home ownership, where there is no regulation to get people to do it. So I think, it's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question. The problem is that definitely at the residential end, that's 20% of emissions in the UK. So it's a significant amount of the emissions that we have, and I think that the attention should be placed there, and that's where the data opportunity is, I think, as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. That's really insightful. Please, David, go.
I think, again, it comes down to this value signal challenge. So as a business, you think about investment and return on investment. And if you can reduce your operating costs, that gets reflected back in your, that's your forward cash flow and ultimately the value of your business. And what Ian, you mentioned buy-to-let. The buy-to-let is a classic problem of like misalignment of value signals, because the owner of the property has no value incentive to reduce the bill size for the tenants, particularly in a rental market, which is extremely in the favour of the owners right now. What we've been working on with home builders is a zero bills home proposition, where you effectively we will work with the home builder to build homes which have net zero bills. So they basically produce as much energy as they consume, and that nets out to zero bills. And what that means is then they can get like an accreditation on that, and they can sell the property for more. So that's like an alignment of value signal there to get something that creates more value for the person who is owning and maintaining the asset versus the person who's operating or living in the asset. And I think that as soon as we get more of those kind of alignment of value signals and can find commercial constructs to make that work, we'll see innovation in the space explode.
I agreed, and just from a NatWest perspective, and we're not alone. We were the first for a green mortgage in the UK, but certainly not alone now. If a customer has a home which is an A or B rated property, they are able to avail of a discounted rate. That is a value signal. More and more now, hard to attribute, but across the piece, widely recognised that if you have a more efficient home, your home is more valuable. It's easily more insurable. You're going to invest, or your energy cost is going to be lower. So I think all of these value signals, and I love how you position it, David, because I think up until now it's very much been seen as a cost. I think if we can change that narrative to say invest in your home and reduce the cost, then that starts to change the narrative, and people start to understand it a little bit more in terms of what the value is going forward.
Yeah, very good, very good. I can see you nodding away there, Robin. I mean, obviously
nothing to add has all been said. So totally agree with that.
Well, let's come on to another question then, because I'd like to really bring you into the conversation, because what's the future, and how are we seeing things evolve today? And from your perspective, using the kind of sustainable housing example, what is the future in this?
So I think, apologies for using a bit of jargon, but particularly in this sector, I think the future is around ecosystem orchestrators. So, i.e. people or organisations that can pull together what is a really fragmented sector into delivering something that works for customers. So if you think about this sector specifically, between you've got manufacturers coming up with new technology, you've got homeowners themselves trying to navigate what they can do in their own homes, which is generally very personalised. You've got grant providers trying to push cash to the right sort of people, financiers, Kevin's employer, of course, installers, which is fragmented with hundreds of thousands, too few people in the sector at the moment, and it's not joined up. And until those things get joined up, we're not going to get the traction we need to get to net zero. Now, I think that's the future, and data is at the core of that. And there's a value proposition of creating value from data. I mean, one thing that we're looking at is Snugg is creating that this valuable data set of across a large number of homes, what's been done in the home, what through the smart meter data, what savings have actually tangibly been delivered, and use that to accelerate the rate of innovation and improvement. So, yeah, with apologies for using consulting terms, but ecosystem orchestrator.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, it's an easy thing to understand. What? I just want to pick you up a little bit on that. Which parts are breaking down then? What are the most obvious broken bridges in that ecosystem at the moment?
Well, I'll start, but I know the other guys want to pitch in here. But to be totally frank, what we're seeing in our journey is the biggest breakdown is in our journey that people get to the point of knowing what to do and how much it's going to cost, and they see, that is ridiculously expensive. But, the average retrofit for a home is in the tens of thousands, about £30,000. People don't have that cash sitting around, and so they may be triggered to do something, but they just don't have the cash, and that's where they drop out. Now, there's loads of issues all the way out across supply chain as well, but that's the biggest issue we've got.
So we need a massive amount of incentivized government money, essentially, like we had.
The government won't fund it, and the government hasn't got excessive cash either at the moment. But
they can find it.
But certainly incentives, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and David and Ian and Kevin, would you share some of the problems that we've got?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Roman that it's like that finance thing is one of the biggest challenges, but certainly not the only challenge. Then, if you think about a customer trying to go through that, there's actually a lot of misinformation about what the right thing to be doing is. There's a huge debate in the energy sector right now about should I be thinking about a hydrogen boiler in my home or or the proven technology of a heat pump, and that just, for a normal consumer, that's very, by the way, we firmly believe that the heat pump is the right choice at Octopus. But that sort of choosing the right technology, and then I think the fragmented installer network is hard to deal with. You're having basically pull in people from lots of different places, sort of almost assemble your crew of people yourself to be able to do this. So yeah, I think those are the big ones for me.
Thank you, Ian, Kevin.
I definitely would agree with the fragmented installer base and having installers that are ready. I mean, it's not just the fragmentation; it's just having people. I have a friend who runs a solar business, and he won't talk to me because he's just got so much else to do at the moment. So it is just crazy, the demand that's out there. I think that's picked up obviously because of the energy situation that we're in at the moment. I think that probably hits on another point as well, which is this whole changeable dynamic. I mean, we are in such a different world than the one we were in 24 months ago. And even 12 months ago, people were very, very focused or becoming very, very focused on net zero. Now they're becoming very focused on energy costs. They haven't forgotten about net zero, but their motivation, to your point about value statements and understanding value, their values have changed, and I think that's going to carry on as well. We shouldn't assume that this is going to be a straight line journey to net zero in housing. This is going to be have a whole bunch of complications in that process, and that's one. Coming back to my original point, one of the reasons why data and ecosystems is so important, so that you can help to navigate that changing world. So I think, as a homeowner myself, I had a different aspiration 12 months ago than the one that I have now around what I want to do to my house, and therefore where I'll spend my money. Even with the point of the amount of I might have to spend, and I think just on that point, I completely agree with Robin. I don't think the government are necessarily going to get behind funding this, but it's all about actually recognizing the value of that. So coming to the point about green mortgages, that's part of the story. The value of the house, is that going to go up now that energy prices are that much higher? And if I have a home that uses less energy, it's going to be more attractive. There's a whole feast of things that comes into that discussion around justifying that big initial purchase, and then how do I pay for it? Do I break it down into little bits? Do I take heat pump as a service, for example, some kind of embedded finance solution, or do I put it on my mortgage, or do I take a green loan that passes on to the next homeowner, like an extension to my mortgage? I mean, there's lots of different things that you can think about how you fund it. But the starting point, of course, has to be the justification for it. And I think that's probably where we should be focusing our attention.
Kevin, anything to add?
Yeah, not to repeat, but echo. I think the need is to create the right conditions for our customers to take action. And we need to do that by driving awareness and education. NatWest run a Green Homes Attitude Tracker, which we've been running for the last year, that tracks consumer sentiment. And while consumer sentiment it shows that there's more awareness, there's still that massive roadblock around cost. So what we're trying to do is put product choices in front of customers that make it easier, but still we appreciate it's challenging, but product choices is our second. So once the customer knows what they want to do, we need to give them the finance and the products that they can utilise to take action. We then need the supply chain to deliver that, and we need the government to underpin it, even if it's through things such as stamp duty reform or council tax reform. Or funding, direct personalised funding, as opposed to the kind of mass grants that are given. We need to incentivise people to reduce their energy, which is a much more long-term solution rather than just funding a short-term gap.
Nice. I mean, I know we're talking about data and digital ecosystems, but I will throw in there that the first fundamental thing people can do is make sure their homes are insulated properly.
Yeah.
That's like number one thing to do, and then everything else is obviously built on top of that. Look, I'd like to go to some positive stuff now, because we know it's pretty dire. I don't want to. Hopefully, our listeners are still with us, going, "Oh God!" But let's look at some of the amazing things that, because you four are all, you're right at the precipice of change. And I'll put this question to you first, David, if you don't mind, because I'm a big fan of Octopus. A big fan of you all. I do bank with NatWest, funnily enough, as well. So I'm yet to use Snugg, and anyway. But the point is that. What are you seeing that is kind of, anything new developing that's using data that's going to just be extraordinary and really kind of like be completely game changing? Like what is on the horizon that we've got to be hopeful about? I think that, David, I'm going to put that question to you. It's going to come to all of you, so the rest of you got a bit of time to think about your answer. But David, what are you seeing that's just like, whoa, this is going to be amazing?
So I talked about some of the stuff that's going on in right now. I think if I'm looking forward, some of the like really incredible stuff I'm seeing in the data world right now is in sort of generalized AI models. So there's a group of like large language models and large image models, which are just doing, like, if you're on Twitter and looking at this stuff, it is like mind-boggling what some of these models can do. And I think where that could translate into the problems we've been talking about, it's nuts today that to understand the thermal characteristics of a home, we tend to send someone out and they measure the thickness of every wall and the number of radius of every room, and they do the MCS survey and they come up with that. I'm seeing technology now where people can just scan. There's like, effectively, you can use your phone camera to scan rooms. We've got incredible time series analysis on smart meter data. So we should be getting to a place, and we also have a very rich, although slightly messy data set of like our properties in the UK and how they're made and what they look like. So we should be getting to a point where we can very quickly tailor solutions for retrofitting homes, and also where we're really focused at the moment is trying to reduce down the journey, to sort of productionize the journey of getting a heat pump into someone's home. So that's all about understanding logistics and supply chains, and I think there'll be an amazing jump in capability there as well.
Great. And how far away are we from that kind of becoming a mainstream reality?
So I think the AI stuff is going to hit people a lot faster than people think. The pace of app development on top of these generalized models is terrifying right now. The supply chain and like getting a heat pump in home in a day is a harder problem. It's a physical problem. It's a people problem. But we're hoping like in the next few years we can really nail that.
I heard there was a lack of 20,000 installers that's required just to meet the demand at the moment. Is that? I mean, I don't know whether that stat was true or not, but it came from, I think, a reliable source. Anybody looking for a job, get into a heat pump installation. Great. So, who would like to go next? Who's ready to kind of give us your dream vision?
I'll give you a go. So I think there's a number of things. Clearly, we are still at the development phase of a whole bunch of these technologies. So we talked about heat pumps. Clearly, as the volumes rise, as the technology matures, the cost is going to come down. So I think how long that will take, and will that put people off doing it now? You've got all of those questions to ask, but that can only really be a good thing. So that's one thing. The second thing is an awful lot of when we talk about data, we talk about how do we get these data sets together, and that's a real challenge. And what you often see is that organizations end up doing it themselves. So enterprises have to broker the data sets with other organizations. And that's where things like, and this is the bit that I'm picking up on, the National Digital Twin project comes into being. So digital twins themselves are designed not, or the thinking around digital twins now is not that an individual enterprise or organization will own a digital twin or a digital map of everything they do. That it's much more around how do we actually bring disparate digital twins with their data feeds and their modeling tools and so on together with a common set of standards. And that's what the National Digital Twin is trying to do. And Fujitsu is very much involved in digital twins. We have a very large program of work in Japan, in Kawasaki, where we're building a digital twin of the whole city there. And all of its operations, and we're mapping onto that the social side of that, social sciences. So how do people react in different ways to changes in governance, to changes in technology deployment, to changes in situations that might occur, I don't know, energy prices going up. So we can begin to bring together all of that data using a common set of standards and make predictions that are far more accurate than they ever were before. So I think digital twins would be the thing that I would focus my attention on. And you're going to ask me when. So the National Digital Twin Program in the UK has been running for a good few years now. They are piloting areas. We're involved in a number of those activities, and some of the standards are being dropped right now. So over the next couple of years, I think you'll see digital twins begin to become the open digital ecosystems that we're talking about, with access to a lot more data and a lot more analytical tools that all enterprises and even individuals can use to make progress in these areas.
Very good, very good. I like that. So, Robin, I'll come to you because I know Kevin's got a couple of things that NatWest are doing in his back pocket. So we'll end with you. But Robin.
No, happy to go in, Jarvis. And by the way, we are live with our MVP, so I'll send you the link to sign up to Snugg, so you get a hat trick of sign-ups. But
yay!
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's in general, and I'll give a specific. So in general, we're looking hard at turning the kind of business case for making these investments from what I call from a no-hoper to a no-brainer. So if you look today, the payback on a lot of these investments is decades, and given that people stay at home for 10 years, it just doesn't make sense, frankly. But when you layer on a lot of the things we've already talked about, but when you layer on the benefits of cheaper technology, more efficient technology, the grants and government support you can get, higher fuel savings, the impact on house value that still needs to really fully come through, the benefits you can get by low cost financing, through Kevin's green mortgage, etc. And the one thing I did want to focus on is carbon credits. When you add those things up together, you completely transform the economics of making a decision. It becomes the no-brainer. So that's what I think, frankly, as a sector, we should be working hard together to do. The one specific I did want to talk about is carbon credits. So if you reduce use of fuel, you get a benefit because your fuel costs go down. Well, we're trying to get people to reduce the carbon emissions, and carbon has value in its own right. So we are relatively advanced in actually monetizing that for consumers. So if people take these initiatives, validate it, and we can check through the smart meter that they're actually reducing carbon usage, there's money in that, in the order of £1,000 a household, that we can monetize and give back to people. So that is something that it isn't immediate, but isn't that far away to actually really incentivize people to make these important steps.
Thanks, Robin. Brilliant. So Kevin, last but by no means least, what have you got to share with us that's in the very near future?
Yeah, and I think it's similar in terms. Certainly, it's data driven, and so at the moment, NatWest are running a tender with a number of organisations around how do we utilise the data coming out of the home. So we talked about EPCs or energy performance certificates before. We know they're a relatively blunt instrument, and they're not dynamic, and they're not behavioural. They're simply about the home itself rather than the people and the occupants of that home. So we're very, very keen to understand the utilisation of energy within the homes, almost like a Fitbit for your home. So making it smart. We talked about digital twins earlier on. I think it's akin to that, where we're really seeking to understand how are people utilising their energy, and then how do we incentivise thereafter to improve even more so, or indeed from a loan perspective. I know we talked about our green mortgages earlier on, but we're also looking at our green additional borrowing. We recognise that to retrofit a home is costly, so how do we make that more attractive? But equally, how do we personalise those loans to utilise that data that says, that this home has a rating of A or B, or the usage of the energy is a particular amount, and therefore the disposable income of those individuals are different to those who are maybe in a less efficient home. And then also, as I mentioned, to incentivise and reward, and I know we talked about jargon earlier on, but almost to gamify it as well. So to try and nudge and drive people to really think about their behaviour, and drive it from a family perspective, to help those families and communities thrive in their homes. It's the biggest asset that people will own most likely, and it's certainly the biggest outlay that they will make. And so what we're trying to do is help our customers with that. And I think utilising that data and trying to drive the dynamism of real-time data, that we can actually help our customers with a personalised offering.
I love that. I'm seeing visions of some live kind of, gamified situation where people are literally reducing stuff and you're seeing it tangibly on your smartphone. It would just be epic. That's got to be the future. I love that. Thank you ever so much. Robin, Ian, David and Kevin, it's been an absolute treat. I could sit here and chat to you all afternoon, but we haven't got that time, unfortunately. I'm sure you've got jobs to get back to as well. So thank you ever so much. We really look forward to, following up with you in the very near future to hear about some of those capabilities that have come into play. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks
you
very much.
Wow, what a fascinating episode. There's so many take-homes for us as individuals, as residential homeowners, as renters, as business owners. There's a plethora of content in there that hopefully should help you be able to reduce your energy bills in this energy crisis that is on our doorstep. Remember, data is evolving. The AI machine learning is evolving, and by the sounds of things, very soon we're going to be able to get access to the renewable technologies that we need in our homes to be able to live more comfortably and more efficiently on our road to net zero. And the next episode is going to be focusing on that scope 3, the holy grail, the part that every industry and business is looking at the moment. So look out for that. And then the following one is people power. It's about purpose. It's about people within our organizations. And, you know, the human element of this is so important. In fact, 60% potentially of the problem is human behavior. So people and purpose is going to be fundamentally game changing. See you next week.